I'm Lisa Worden, and I'm the Assistant Program Director as well as the Music Director at KROQ. And I have been here, about 16 years, and much of my job has to do with the music part of the radio station, which anyone who thinks about KROQ would think, well, what else is there besides the music? There actually is quite a bit more, but the music is the main component. I am involved with finding bands to play on the radio station, finding songs to play, booking bands for the events that we do, coordinating interviews, basically anything that has to do with the artists that we play, I'm involved in it. I also help program the radio station, which again, one might say, what does that mean? I help coordinate the music that you listen to on the radio, so what you're hearing, I've kind of already had a hand in it. Help with the promotions that we do on the station. We do a lot of contesting. So I help with securing the contests and deciding what contests we're going to do and when we're going to do them. And that's kind of a broad overview. The DJs definitely have a voice and a say with what goes on at KROQ. And then at the end of the day, the programming department, which consists of myself, Kevin Weatherly, and Gene Sandblum, the three of us are kind of the core programming team of the radio station. We definitely kind of, help script out the music that you hear on the radio. Because someone's got to do that, otherwise it would just be mayhem and, you'd be hearing, God, who knows, Rihanna on KROQ. Someone's got to be at the helm to kind of, put it all together so it's there for the DJs who are the talent and the ones who present everything over the airwaves. The most popular songs are put in a heavy rotation. And that means, right now, if you were to ask me what those are, I would tell you Mumford & Sons, Muse, Neon Trees, Everybody Talks, Linkin Park. It's whatever the biggest and hottest bands and songs are for us. Those are in a heavy rotation. Those are the ones you hear the most. So when you turn on KROQ, we want our, majority of our listeners to always be hearing their favorite songs. That's the idea. A lighter rotation are things that either are brand new or are kind of getting up and running, and they're put into a little bit of lighter rotation to kind of get them on the radio, grease the wheels, and then we kind of wait for their marketing machine to kick in and give us some more, you would say give it legs, give it a little more presence elsewhere besides on the radio to help get it familiar. These days TV commercials are a big driver of that, and bands always want those. So those are lighter rotation records. And then once you start to feel it becoming a little more popular in the marketplace, the rotation can then, increase from there. We try to gauge the rotations with where our audience is at. Well, it's interesting. I pay a lot of attention to requests, and the phone ops you were in that room and you got to film them. They actually answer all the calls that come in from the request lines. So when people call to request songs, call to ask about a song, call to win a contest, the phone always does get answered. It might be busy, but it eventually gets answered. And I pay a lot of attention to what people are requesting. I also pay attention to our Twitter and Facebook just so I know what's going on. And surprisingly, a majority of the requests that come through are for things that we are playing. And I get hit up with that a lot. They'll say, I called and requested, I don't know, this really old Social Distortion song and I haven't heard it yet. Well, that person probably called once for that one song. Meanwhile, I've got 100 people calling in one day to hear the new Mumford & Sons song. So we do pay attention to requests a lot, but I look at quantity over, a request here and a request there. When I first came to KROQ, I was the music director. And admittedly, I didn't know anything about radio. I was really green. I grew up in Southern California. I grew up in Diamond Bar. So I grew up listening to the radio station. And at the time, before I worked at KROQ, I worked at a record label. So Kevin, my boss, was the one who said, hey, I think you'd be great at this job at KROQ. And I was like, I don't know radio. I don't even know how I'd do it. And he's like, I'll teach you. So I came to KROQ, started out as you would say the MD, that's the abbreviation. And I learned radio basically from square one, from the ground up. And I learned what it meant to find a hit. I mean, a lot of the times people will say, well, this is a hit and that's a hit. Well, really being able to identify a true hit is actually an art that can be learned. I learned that to being able to schedule music, to being able to have a really keen ear for radio and figuring out what songs are going to work and what ones might not work at first, but then it takes time. Really developing ears. And then, maintaining relationships with record companies and artists and all that kind of stuff. So I did that for a long time, probably about 8 years. And then I transitioned and went to Washington, D.C. to be a program director in 2003. So that was my jump from being just an MD to a PD. I was in Washington, D.C. for 2 years, and then Kevin brought me back to KROQ in 2005. And he brought me back in as the MD, saying, I'm going to promote you to the aPD in a couple of years, which he did. And so that's kind of how I worked my way up the ladder in radio. And, you know, those positions, the MD and the aPD and the PD, which is Kevin, they're very coveted positions, and they aren't things that just people walk into. You really have to earn your stripes and learn the craft of radio. And the fact I could do all that at KROQ is really, I'm very lucky. Because a lot of people will work in radio in small markets and be a music director in Columbus, Ohio for 5 years, hoping to eventually get into, you know, maybe Chicago, and then catapult into LA or New York. The fact I got to start off in LA and remain in LA besides being in DC, I'm really lucky. So that's kind of the radio path for me. Probably the most entry-level position at a radio station is being a phone op or a promotions van driver, work in the streets. I've had several of my phone ops, because I hire all those kids, move up the ladder and be in different positions. And that's kind of the entry-level position at any radio station. You know, being a van driver, becoming a promotions assistant, hopefully becoming the assistant promotions director, becoming the promotions director. You know, like there's definitely the step ladder. You know, on the programming side, you know, hopefully are a phone op, and then maybe you become someone who helps produce commercials. Maybe then you become a commercial director. Maybe then you become a DJ, because that's what you've always wanted to do. And then maybe then you decide I want to be in programming and you want to be a music director. So there's definitely steps on the ladder. I happened to walk in and get one of the higher positions because of what I was already doing. And also my boss saw something in me that he thought, you know, would be good for that position. But yeah, there's definitely a lot of entry-level positions in radio that you can start at. Look, there are so many bands in Los Angeles and in Orange County, so many. And I know a lot of them want to just go be on the radio. And I would say to all these bands, yes, being on the radio is awesome, and being on the local program is awesome, but that your work is just starting. You know, it's up to you to market your band, tour. It also starts with the music first and foremost. Write amazing songs. You know, if your music's not good, no one's gonna wanna pay attention to you. Don't write songs for the radio, write songs for yourself that are true, and then radio will follow. You know, things that get my attention are a band that can, you know, sell out the Roxy. You know, like a band maybe I've never heard, and I hear the music and go, wow, this is good. And next thing I know, they're selling out the Troubadour or the Roxy. I go, wow, they actually have some fans. That makes me even more intrigued. And then I might read, you know, an article on a blog that is favorable. You know, all those things add up. You know, the biggest thing for me is the music. You can have the best marketing in the world, and if your music's not good, I'm not interested. So, you know, that's really where it all starts. For an artist that's recorded an EP, well, it is easier to record these days, I suppose, because you can do it on a laptop. And, you know, before you didn't have the electronics that we do now, so you'd need to book studio time and actually, like, you know, spend more money to record a record, where now you can do it in your bedroom. Again, it's kind of what I said, where it does all start with the music. And if you're really good, then awesome, you're ahead of the curve. You know, then you need to tour, you need to be able to play live well. You know, if you're not good live, don't play for anybody until you are. Keep playing, and then when you feel like, okay, I've finally got it, then start showing yourself out there, and then develop your fan base. And for me, it's more than just Twitter and Facebook. Yes, they're great tools, they're great marketing. It's a way to get the word out really fast to a lot of people, but it also needs to be genuine and organic. You know, just because you tweet your music out doesn't make it good. I knew in high school this is what I wanted to do. I didn't know it would be in radio. I knew, though, I'd work in music. And music has always been my passion. It's always been what I've loved. I would sneak out of my house and go to shows. I would be in Los Angeles, and my parents never knew I was in Los Angeles seeing shows at a far too young age. I knew this is what I wanted to do. And, you know, when I graduated high school, I immediately went to college. That was always the plan for me from my parents. And you know, I was along for that plan because I knew it was important for me to go. They wanted me to be an accountant, and I said, nope, that's not happening. I will study business for you, but I am not going to be an accountant. I'm going to work in music. And so in my junior year in college, I got an internship at a record label. And that's kind of, you know, My parents were like, if that's truly what you want to do, you better start getting on it now so that you have a job when you graduate. And I'm like, great. And so I started, sending out letters to be an intern. I didn't get any replies, nothing. And ironically enough, my sister heard a DJ on KROQ say that a specific record label needed interns, and she wrote down the phone number, and it was for SBK Records. And I called and I got an interview, and they hired me, and I got my foot in the door, and I was so happy to be working for free 3 days a week in Los Angeles at a record label. So I did that for a year. Then I got a job at Tower Records to pay the bills. So I was working at Tower in Long Beach, going to school in Long Beach, still driving to LA to intern. And after being there 2 years, they hired me to be a promotions assistant. And that was when I went, all right, cool. Now this is happening, so I'm gonna actually get paid for being here. And that's kind of how I got my start. And that's why, for kids growing up now who want to be in the business, you need to make it happen. Nothing's handed to you unless you're lucky. Sometimes it is, but you really got to work to make it happen. And I'm not just talking being in a band. I'm saying if you want to work in the music business, you gotta find a way to get your foot in the door. And if you really want something, you got to go for it. So I first met Steve through his wife, Fran. She was a marketing director at the record label I worked at. And she would hear me playing music often in my cubicle of bands that her husband managed, because I'm really into British bands and the whole Britpop scene, and I loved Ned's Atomic Dustbin and the Wonder Stuff, and I'm trying to remember, he had a couple other bands he managed that I liked. And so she would comment to me and say, oh, my husband manages this band, and I'm like, oh my God. Like, to me that was just like, oh, what a superstar, like, wow. And I wanted to go to the Reading Festival. I saw the ad for it and it had all these great bands playing, and I'd never been to England, and it was a dream of mine to go. And I asked Fran, hey, if I get my way there, do you think Steve could help me get into the Reading Festival? And she's like, oh, I'm sure he could. So I booked my plane tickets, booked my hotel. My sister went with me, and sure enough, Steve hooked me up and got me into the Reading Festival, and the Wonder Stuff headline, and I was in seventh heaven. So that kind of started my friendship with Steve. And he then started inviting me to events he would do and barbecues. He used to have some really great barbecues at his house, and all his bands would be there, and I was completely starstruck, and he probably never knew that, but it was really fun. So I've known Steve a long time. That's kind of how I met him. Yeah, look, just because a label might say, no, we don't want to sign you, your music's not good enough, that shouldn't stop you, ever. I mean, if you believe in what you're doing, just use it to motivate you. I do agree with the statement, don't burn your bridges, because this business is really small. That's the thing. It's like, you may think, oh, I'll never see that person again. I'll never talk to them again. Next thing you know, you get signed to a label and that person comes in as the president, and you're like, shit, I was an asshole to that person. So, that's always my motto is, I believe in what I believe in, and I'm passionate. And at the same time, if you don't have something nice to say, just don't say it. You don't want to let the gatekeepers discourage you, because there are some gatekeepers that will like you. And at the same time, yeah, don't burn bridges, don't badmouth. You don't want to be that person. There's a few artists that can get by with badmouthing and it helps them, but chances are you won't be one of them. It's just not a good idea. Yeah, it mostly started, I would say, when I worked at the record label, when I was interning. That's probably the earliest it started, was, because I had access to the bands that were on the label, and they would use me, because they would say, oh, Lisa's super into that music. Oh, I don't feel like taking Blur to KROQ. Lisa, you go take Blur to Loveline. And I'd be like, woohoo! I'd have my car fired up. I'm like, get in, guys. And whereas someone else would be like, I don't have to go out at 10 at night. So those were the kind of things they had me doing, was, taking bands to late night radio shows, or, on a weekend. They would need me to cover an in-store, because at the time record stores sold records, actually. So they would say, okay, Lisa, go cover that in-store for me. And I was thrilled to do it. So my relationships with some bands started, that early. And through the years, because I've been doing this so long and, been at the station so long, but even prior to that, you develop relationships. And I think, like anybody, when something's genuine. Bands know I am, and I'm not fake, and I don't lie, and I do what I'm gonna do. I do what I say I'm going to do. And through the years, I've become friends with lots of bands, and it's been great. I don't like to brag and name drop, because that's just not who I am. But it's it's important, and that's what I found is sort of like, no one likes to be told no. And it's hard when I know we're not going to play a record and it's someone I'm friends with. That's really hard. But rather than lie or not tell the truth, I basically, I do tell the truth, but then I always find a way to help them out. Because there always is a way. We've got lots of tools here. We have a website that has a lot of, reach. A lot of people come to KROQ.com, and there's lots of ways to help bands. And yeah, it's like, I would say the ratio of men to women definitely favors the male side in the music business in general. And I think that it's not something I ever regarded as a setback. I just knew, I believed in myself, and I knew what I wanted, and I knew what my goals were, and I went for it, and never let myself get into the trap of saying, oh, I'm a woman, and oh, I'll never get where I need to be, and it's a man's world. Like, I just don't subscribe to that kind of philosophy in a way, and some women might do that and it holds them back. And fortunately for me, it's turned out really great. And, I get along with men really well, so it's not a problem for me. And my boss is wonderful, and I have an excellent relationship with him, and he's been great to me. So, yeah, I mean, look, what you're saying is true. There's a lot more men than women in this business, and I can only say to women starting out, just don't let it bother you, and don't dwell on that. Just dwell on your talents and believe in yourself and go for it. And someone's going to recognize your talent. It's kind of like what I would say to bands. If someone says no to you, just keep going. Someone's going to say yes if you're good. And it's the same thing in, being a woman in the business. Someone's going to say yes. If someone says no, it's okay. So in other words, what would I look for someone who wanted to be in radio? Yeah. Someone who has a genuine knowledge and passion for music. And there's lots of people that love music, but for being in radio, there's different aspects of it. If you're a DJ, you need to be able to have a really great on-air demeanor. You need to be funny, witty, have that kind of irreverent attitude that comes from KROQ. We don't hire cheesy DJs. That's just not what we have here. So if that was the field of radio they wanted to be in, that's what I'd be looking for. Passionate about the music, knows the music, great on-air delivery, engaging, funny, those types of things. On the programming side, doing what I do, someone who could recognize hits. We've kind of touched on that earlier, even though I said that you didn't want me to say. But not someone who just loves all music. It's easy to love everything. You got to be able to hone in and go, yeah, that song's going to appeal to our, 2 million Cume audience that we have. And then someone who's just, got good energy and fits the vibe of what the radio station is. If you walk around, there's definitely a vibe. It's a fun, really amazing atmosphere to work in. Everyone's super passionate about the radio station. So someone who could kind of fit in well with that environment. The satellite radio and stuff like that hasn't really made a difference to, at least where I work. It hasn't really, I actually really like Sirius. I think there's a lot of really cool stations on there that I like to listen to. So I think it's cool. But it hasn't really had an impact on terrestrial radio, in my opinion. Being able to hear radio on your phone is awesome. I mean, that's great for us. To be able to, turn on your iPhone and listen to KROQ is wonderful. You can also listen to lots of other things, which is fine. As long as we're part of that, movement and, moving forward with the technology, it's all good.